the longer Season of the Wish goes, the more I feel like something is missing from the core gameplay loop. And I think I might know what it is. Elemental Orbs. We only had them for like 3 months. But, you know, I really miss them. I know I dogged on them during Season of the Witch and right after it ended, but looking back, it was kind of fun. In my opinion, they have a place in the PvE meta and can help diversify the meta in interesting ways, and maybe, just maybe, bring a crumb of old build crafting back. Now, how could some colorful balls make build crafting more interesting? Well, if you remember, warmind cells, they acted as a playstyle that stood counter to charge with light and elemental wells. They were strong, but had issues like restricting the weapons you could use way too much, locking you out from other powerful perks, and other players could steal them from you. We'll address some of these issues as we push elemental orbs into a pseudo warmind cell type of role. First, we should probably describe what they do for everyone that didn't play Season of the Witch. So, what elemental orbs are and what they do, basically, killing enemies with a weapon that matches your subclass has a chance to create an elemental orb. You can pick up elemental orbs and throw them to deal damage and apply debuffs. And the debuffs go like this. On Solar, we have Scorch being applied, and is a decent amount. Arc, we had Jolt, which was honestly probably too strong, but your other option is Blind, and that's probably stronger. So yeah, Arc applied Jolt. Void applied Volatile, not the strongest Void debuff, but it was good enough. Strand, it was a Tangle, so it really didn't apply debuffs, it was a Tangle. And then Stasis. Did you know we never had a Stasis Elemental Orb in Season of the Witch? It focused on the light subclasses, so Strand was put to the wayside. Unless you count Snowballs, but that's not really the same thing. So basically we're going to have it slow enemies when you throw them. Freeze is probably a little too strong for what we're looking for. And otherwise, our options are basically can make a crystal, which could be cool, but I don't know how exactly that would work. Because you would throw it, it deals a bunch of damage, and then you have to break the crystal to deal damage again. It could be interesting, don't get me wrong, but I think slow works fine for this. At its core, elemental orbs are an extension, a remnant of your paracausal power, and I think a great way for us to access this function is with an armor mod. The way it works is you get kills with a weapon that matches your subclass, and you have a chance to make an elemental orb, then it goes on cooldown. But getting multi-kills with weapons matching your subclass reduce the cooldown. Also, I think the creation of orbs should require 1 or 2 armor charges to be consumed, and I think this armor mod should belong in the boots. One of, if not the primary, or even the only reason why boots are the best slot for elemental orbs, in my opinion, is to begin, well, surges. Think about it. Basically, every build uses 1 or 2 surges in it. And many of the exotic armor pieces that provide surge effects go underutilized. Because, well, the difference between 2 or 4 surges is relatively kind of low. But if you're using a boot slot for elemental orbs, you may need to replace your surge mod or be pushed more towards using an armor piece that grants a surge type damage buff. If this alone isn't enough to push the needle, multiple copies of elemental orbs could reduce the cooldown. Orbs deal more damage with surges active, if it already isn't like that. And Strand just gets the bypass this mod, being that Tangles fill the spot of elemental orbs. So maybe a Tangle cooldown reduction for Strand. Now that elemental orbs are taking a slot in our armor, We need to make sure they can hang with and compete with surges and other charged with light armor mods. Powerful attraction should make our elemental orbs you create slowly move towards you after you activate a class ability. And fastball should also apply to elemental orbs, allowing you to throw them farther. Anyways, here's some ideas for other mods to support elemental orbs. For our helmet, we could call it like sharpshooter or orb shooter, something like that. Basically, you can now shoot elemental orbs to break them, which Strand wouldn't need because you can already do that with Tangles. So, say you're using a scout rifle. Let's just use, in this example, Wicked Implement. So you're using Wicked Implement, you spawn a stasis elemental orb all the way across the map. You can now shoot it to break it to slow enemies, and because you're already using Wicked Implement, it's likely that a bunch of enemies are about to freeze from that. It's a lot better, right? Yeah, I think so at least. And then another helmet mod option is we could have allies using our orbs reduce the cooldown. We had this in Season of the Witch, but it wasn't an armor mod, it was artifact. I think this would help us a lot. Again, this comes down to Strand being weird. Maybe we give them a benefit for choosing to use elemental orbs versus surges. Maybe we don't. But I think allies using our orbs should reduce the cooldown to prevent as much stealing, or at least if it is stolen, you're not screwed, because that sucks. For our arm mods, I think this one's kind of fun. We have a slam ability. So the way they work in Season of the Witch is you can throw them. That's it. With the helmet mod, you can shoot them to pop them, in my concept. And with the arms, you have a melee ability, which slams it to the ground like Ruinous Effigy and applies the debuff to enemies. For probably, I would say, dealing more damage, because you're having to get up close with it and not chuck it across the map. So I think that would be a pretty decent way to use them. It's just a higher damage slam ability with maybe a smaller radius. And then another idea for another arm slot mod for elemental orbs is ability generation. Basically, whenever you throw an elemental orb, if allies are within the radius of the explosion, or yourself, they get a small bump to abilities. 5 to 10% ability generation. Not super, just melee grenade class ability. 5 to 10% increase in charge, and I think that's good enough. I think that would be very solid, a very tempting option for a lot of people that are creating orbs very quickly and rapidly. I think that could be a very good thing for them to use. Moving on to our chest piece. First mod I'm going to go over, I did make 2 for each armor piece. For our chest plates, I think we need to give buffs to them, which would encourage us to throw them at our feet more often to buff ourselves and our teammates. Starting with Void, what would Void do? Of course, hitting an enemy with it still applies volatile, but if you grab the elemental cohesion, I don't know, some name for it, to grant buffs to allies, Void would grant Void Overshield to allies and yourself for being in radius. Solar would cure yourself and allies. Arc, amplification. It amplifies. It's not a great buff, but it already jolts, so we can calm down. Stasis, frost armor, because there's no way they add elemental orbs back before frost armor is put in the game, or whatever it ends up being called. That's just the dev name they gave us last year for it. But frost armor, whatever the stasis defensive buff is. And then Strand, I almost went Woven Mail, but we already have that through Titan aspects, and I don't want to take that away from Titans. So I'm going to do an option that's probably a little bit broken. Unraveling rounds. Yeah. Giving unraveling rounds to Tangles if you and your allies are in range. So on Strand Titan, this is going to be unbelievably broken, but that class is already insanely overpowered. So it really isn't a change of pace. The Banner of War is still the best thing on there no matter what. But buffs aside, because I think that's a good idea, let's move to our second option. I think an ability that lets us guard with the elemental orb would be pretty good. I think we limit the amount of damage it can take. Let's say it can take 300 damage. So you guard and it puts an aura around you in a radius, and enemies can't hit you through it or your allies. But it only has like 300 health, so it's less than edge of action even. So it's probably going to get ground up really quick in PvE or PvP. So you don't get a lot of protection from it, but it might be enough to start health regen. Or if you have a warlock on your team, they can place a rift to heal you. Or you get a healing grenaded and not die. But if you can approximate how much damage you're taking at any moment, you could guard for like 280 damage, chuck it, and just keep rolling like that. I think that might be pretty cool to give it through mods, the ability to pop from being shot, the ability to slam on people, and the ability to guard. It's Ruinous Effigy with extra steps, but better. And I want to talk about boots again. I know I talked about it towards the beginning, but again, the classic elemental orbs generation. Use a weapon matching your subclass, get kills, make an orb. It consumes 1 armor charge to do. Multi-kills with weapons matching your subclass can reduce this cooldown. Multi-kills. So like, let's say the base cooldown's like 14 seconds. You get a multi-kill with your weapon that matches your subclass, and it'll reduce it by, let's say, 3. For every multi-kill. You get a reduction of 3 seconds per multi-kill. Pretty good, right? Then we introduce another ability in the boots that would also allow us to generate elemental orbs. And I held this one off because it's a little different than the normal generation method. Ability kills. It's not that different. It's just not how it used to be. So ability kills can have a chance to make elemental orbs. It's a lower chance than weapons matching your subclass. Lower chance to create them. And then multi-kills. Again, let's go with 14 seconds for that cooldown. A multi-kill will only reduce it by 1 or 2 seconds per multi-kill. Because we're in an ability meta, we need to think of ways to boost weapon usage and weapon effectiveness. And I think a great way to incentivize people using their weapons over their abilities is making weapons more desirable than abilities. Because right now, the meta is use a weapon that makes your abilities come back faster for a lot of people. So I think doing that, making it a less effective version, would help a lot. But people that want to run ability builds still have a way to buy into the elemental orb system effectively. So that's my idea for the boots mods. Let's go to our class item. So for our class item, elemental munitions, again from Season of the Witch. Basically, you have a higher chance of making special or heavy ammo for your allies and yourself by getting kills with your elemental orbs. And I think this should, stack with scouts and finders, just like it did in Season of the Witch. So yeah, elemental munitions can come back, maybe reduce the chances because it used to be like kind of ridiculous. But again, if we're looking for ways to get out of an ability-based meta, having more special and heavy could be a great way, and it would give us a new route, a new way to build into using double special. Double special still kind of usable. It's pretty usable actually, but it's just not what it used to be. And I think elemental orbs could help bridge that gap, especially with elemental munitions. And then our final mod for this video, orbs from finishers. Basically, it works like you know, the boots mods, except it's a 100% chance, and every finisher reduces the cooldown by 3 seconds. So you get a finisher, cooldown starts 14 seconds, you get an orb, throw the orb, finish another enemy, goes down 5, just keep repeating. So you can get a lot of orbs pretty quick probably, but you know, you have to do finishers for them, which aren't always available. So I think that would be a nice way to also spec into it, especially for ability-based builds that aren't using weapon multi-kills as much as more weapon-focused builds. I believe with a supported mod suite similar to this, elemental orbs could compete with surges and promote the use of exotics like Mantle of Battle Harmony, Icefall Mantle, Mask of Bacchus. Another side effect of this system could be making double special more prominent. I don't think that's the worst thing. Anyways, that's just my thoughts. Tell me what you think down below. I'd love to hear what you think. Do you want elemental orbs to come back? Do you think this would help them come back in a way that is fair, balanced, competes with the current mods? Yeah. Please just comment down below what you think. Subscribe, like the video, share it even. All that stuff's really appreciated. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.